The morning I found that little black device stuck to my car's bumper, I thought it was just another piece of road debris. Austin traffic will throw anything at you. Rocks, bits of tire, the occasional fast food wrapper that somehow manages to magnetize itself to your undercarriage. But this thing was different. Too symmetrical. Too purposeful. I was running my usual Tuesday routine. 6 a.m. workout at the gym, quick shower, then home to grab coffee and check on Olivia before heading to the office. The commute from our Cedar Park neighborhood to downtown Austin usually gave me time to decompress, plan my day, maybe catch up on a podcast. That morning, something felt off about the car's handling. Nothing dramatic, just a slight vibration that hadn't been there the day before. Probably picked up something on the highway, I muttered, pulling into a gas station to check the tires. That's when I saw it. A black rectangular object, maybe 2 inches long, attached to the rear bumper with what looked like industrial-strength magnets. My cybersecurity training kicked in immediately. This wasn't road debris. I knelt down for a closer look, careful not to touch it. The device was sleek, professional-looking, with a small LED that blinked once every few seconds. GPS tracker. Military or law enforcement grade, from the looks of it. The kind of equipment that cost serious money. My first instinct was to leave it there and drive straight to the police station. But my tech background made me curious. Who would want to track me? I was a senior software engineer at a mid-sized tech company, not exactly CIA material. I dealt with network security and data protection. Important work, but hardly the stuff that attracts international espionage. Using my phone's flashlight, I examined the device more carefully. No visible brand markings, but the build quality was impressive. Definitely not some cheap tracking gadget you'd buy online. This was professional surveillance equipment. I pulled out my car's emergency kit and used a plastic tool to carefully detach the tracker. It came free easily. The magnets were strong, but designed for quick attachment and removal. Whatever this was, it was meant to be temporary. The drive home felt different with that device sitting in my passenger seat. I kept checking my mirrors, looking for vehicles that might be following me, but the morning traffic looked normal. Soccer moms in SUVs, contractors in pickup trucks, office workers like me nursing coffee in sedans. Nothing suspicious. Victoria was in the kitchen when I walked in, already dressed in one of her sharp business suits. She'd been working as a regional sales director for a major pharmaceutical company for the past 3 years, and the job suited her perfectly. Always put together, always professional, always climbing the next rung of the corporate ladder. "You're running late," she said, without looking up from her phone. "Olivia's already at school. I've got that client meeting in San Antonio today, so I won't be back until tomorrow evening." "Victoria, look at this." I set the device on the kitchen counter. "I found it attached to my car." She glanced up, and I watched her face change. The casual morning expression shifted to something else. Surprise, concern, maybe a touch of fear. "What is it?" She set down her coffee and picked up the device, turning it over in her hands. "GPS tracker, professional grade. Someone's been monitoring my movements." "That's..." She put it down quickly, as if it had suddenly become hot. "That's terrifying. Who would do something like this?" I'd been wondering the same thing. "Could be work-related. We handle sensitive data at the company. Maybe someone's trying to gather intelligence on our clients or security protocols." "Or it could be random," Victoria said, her voice tight with worry. "Identity theft? Kidnapping reconnaissance? Who knows? This is exactly why I've been telling you we need better security around here." She was right about that. Our Cedar Park neighborhood was safe, but we'd been talking about upgrading our home security system for months. The conversation always got pushed aside by work schedules and Olivia's activities. "I think we should call the police," Victoria continued. "This is stalking, right? Or harassment. There have to be laws against putting tracking devices on people's cars." I nodded, already thinking through the implications. I'll call Blake Thompson. Remember him from college? He's a detective with Round Rock PD now. He'll know what to do. Good idea. Victoria checked her watch. I really need to get on the road for this meeting. But Ethan, promise me you'll be careful today. Vary your route, maybe leave work early. Until we know what this is about, we should assume you're still being watched. The concern in her voice felt genuine, and I appreciated it. 16 years of marriage had taught me to read Victoria's moods, and she was definitely rattled by this discovery. Whatever was going on, she was just as surprised as I was. After she left for her meeting, I spent 20 minutes examining the tracker more closely. The device was surprisingly sophisticated. Waterproof housing, long-life battery, probably capable of real-time location updates. Whoever was behind this had invested serious money in surveillance equipment. I called Blake from my office phone, not wanting to use my cell in case someone was monitoring my communications. Ethan Porter, Blake's voice carried the easy confidence I remembered from our college days. It's been way too long. What's going on? I need some professional advice, I said. Someone attached a GPS tracking device to my car. The tone of the conversation shifted immediately. When did you find it? This morning. High-end equipment, professionally installed. I've got the device with me. Don't touch it any more than you already have, Blake said. Bring it to the station this afternoon. We'll dust it for prints and see what we can find out. In the meantime, assume you're still under surveillance. Mix up your routine, stay in public places, and let me know if you notice anyone following you. Following me? Physical surveillance often goes hand in hand with electronic tracking. If someone's invested in GPS monitoring, they might have eyes on you too. The rest of the day, I found myself constantly checking mirrors and scanning parking lots. Every silver sedan looked suspicious. Every person who glanced in my direction seemed like a potential threat. By 5 p.m., I was convinced that half of Austin was part of some elaborate surveillance network. Blake met me at the Round Rock police station that evening. He'd put on some weight since college, but he still had the sharp eyes and quick wit that had made him a natural for law enforcement. Let's see what you've got, he said, leading me to a small conference room. I placed the tracker on the table, and Blake examined it with a magnifying glass. Definitely professional grade. This is a Phoenix GPS tracker. Probably runs about $800 retail. Battery life of 6 to 8 weeks, real-time updates, magnetic mounting system. Any way to trace who bought it? We can try, but these are sold through dozens of online retailers. If someone paid cash or used a prepaid credit card, we might hit a dead end. Blake looked up from the device. Tell me about your work. Any disgruntled employees, competitor issues, sensitive projects? I walked him through my job responsibilities at the tech company. Network security, data protection protocols, client system maintenance. Important work, but nothing that should attract this level of attention. What about personal life? Divorces, custody disputes, angry ex-girlfriends? Nothing like that. Victoria and I have been married 16 years. No major conflicts, no crazy exes in the picture. Our biggest argument this year was about whether to refinish the deck. Blake made notes on a yellow pad. I'll file a report and see what the forensics team can pull from the device. In the meantime, I want you to document everything. Times, locations, people you notice multiple times. If someone's running surveillance on you, they'll make mistakes eventually. That night, I explained the situation to Olivia over dinner. At 14, she was old enough to understand the basics without getting too frightened. So someone was spying on Dad? She asked, twirling spaghetti around her fork. It looks that way, but the police are investigating, and we're being extra careful now. Is Mom scared? She seemed really worried this morning. Victoria had called from San Antonio around lunchtime, checking to make sure I'd contacted the police and asking for updates on the investigation. Her concern seemed genuine, but I'd noticed she was asking a lot of detailed questions about what the police plan to do next. We're all a little worried, I admitted. But this kind of thing usually turns out to be a misunderstanding or a case of mistaken identity. Once the police figure out what's going on, everything will get back to normal. Olivia nodded, but I could see she was processing the implications. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. She'd inherited Victoria's analytical mind and my technical curiosity, a combination that made her excellent at robotics competitions, but also meant she thought deeply about problems. Dad, what if it's not random? What if someone's specifically targeting our family? The question had been nagging at me all day. Then we'll deal with it. The important thing is that we're aware of the situation now, and we're taking precautions. Over the next week, I became hyper-aware of my surroundings. Every morning commute was an exercise in surveillance detection. I varied my routes to work, took different paths to the gym, and made random stops at coffee shops and bookstores. If someone was following me, I was going to make them work for it. The first definite sighting came on a Thursday morning. Silver Honda Accord, about 3 cars back in traffic, had been behind me since I left the neighborhood. When I took an unexpected exit to grab coffee, the Honda followed. When I got back on the highway, it was there again. I called Blake from the coffee shop. I think I've got a tail. Where are you? Starbucks on Ranch Road 620. Silver Honda Accord. License plate. Hang on. I walked closer to the window. The car was parked across the street, driver visible but keeping his face turned away. License plate Delta Alpha November 749. Got it. Stay in the coffee shop for now. I'm going to run the plate and see what comes up. 20 minutes later, Blake called back. Registered to Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Could be legitimate business travel, could be someone using a rental to avoid detection. Did you get a look at the driver? Middle-aged white guy, dark hair, wearing a business suit. Professional appearance, nothing obviously suspicious except for the fact that he's following me. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow morning, take your normal route to work, but when you get to the Walnut Creek intersection, take the exit toward the shopping center instead of continuing downtown. If he follows you there, we'll know this isn't coincidence. That evening, Victoria returned from her San Antonio trip full of questions about the investigation. She wanted to know everything Blake had told me, what the police planned to do next, whether they'd identified any suspects. Maybe we should hire a private security company, she suggested over dinner. At least until the police figure out what's happening. That seems like overkill, I said. Blake thinks this will resolve itself once we identify who's behind it. But what if it doesn't? What if this person escalates? We have Olivia to think about. Victoria's concern felt genuine, but something about her intensity struck me as odd. She was usually calm under pressure. It was one of the qualities that made her successful in pharmaceutical sales. But ever since I'd found the tracker, she'd been almost frantic about security measures. Let's see what happens with the surveillance tomorrow, I said. If we can identify the person following me, the police will have a lot more to work with. Friday morning, I executed Blake's plan perfectly. Normal route toward downtown, then the unexpected exit toward the shopping center. Sure enough, the Honda Accord followed. When I pulled into the parking lot, the driver kept going, but I caught a clear view of his face. Mid-50s, receding hairline, wearing sunglasses and a navy suit. He looked more like a businessman than a criminal, which somehow made the whole situation more unsettling. I called Blake immediately. Same car, same driver. He followed me to the shopping center, then kept driving when I parked. Professional surveillance, Blake said. This guy knows what he's doing. I think it's time to force a confrontation. What do you mean? We set up a controlled encounter, choose the time and place, have backup present, and find out who this person is and what he wants. The idea made my stomach tighten. Is that safe? Safer than letting this continue indefinitely. If someone's running surveillance on you, they have a reason. We need to find out what that reason is before the situation escalates. Blake's plan was elegantly simple. The following Monday, I would drive to a remote location outside the city, an abandoned farm property that Blake knew from previous police work. The location offered multiple escape routes but also excellent opportunities for his team to block any attempts to flee. "I'll bring 2 other officers," Blake explained. "We'll position ourselves to intercept whoever's following you. If this person is legitimate, private investigator, process server, something like that, we'll sort it out peacefully. If they're up to something illegal, we'll have them contained." I spent the weekend wrestling with anxiety about the plan. Victoria seemed even more worried than I was, repeatedly suggesting that we contact the FBI or hire private security instead of taking matters into our own hands. "What if this person is dangerous?" she asked Sunday night as we lay in bed. "What if confronting them just makes things worse?" "Blake knows what he's doing," I said, "and we can't keep living like this. Every time I leave the house, I'm looking over my shoulder. Every time Olivia goes to school, I'm wondering if she's safe. We need answers." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "I just don't want anything to happen to you, to our family." Monday morning arrived gray and cold, typical November weather in Austin. I followed my normal routine, gym, coffee, check on Olivia, but my hands were shaking slightly as I started the car. By 10 a.m., I was driving toward the abandoned farm property, watching my mirrors carefully. The Honda Accord appeared about 5 minutes into the drive, maintaining its usual distance. This time, instead of anxiety, I felt a grim satisfaction. Whatever was happening, it was finally going to come to a head. The farm was exactly as Blake had described. 20 acres of overgrown fields surrounded by trees, with a single dirt road leading in and out. I parked near the old farmhouse and waited, engine running, watching the access road. The Honda appeared 2 minutes later, slowing as it approached the farmhouse. I could see the driver clearly now. Same middle-aged man, looking confused about why I'd stopped in such an isolated location. Then Blake's team moved. 2 police vehicles appeared from behind the trees, blocking the access road. A third car came up behind the Honda, preventing retreat. It was over in less than 30 seconds. I got out of my car and walked toward the Honda, where Blake was already talking to the driver through the window. The man looked professional and calm, not like someone who'd been caught doing something illegal. "Ethan Porter?" the man called out as I approached. "My name is Raymond Pierce. I'm a licensed private investigator from Houston." Blake nodded to me. "Mr. Pierce has been tracking you for the past 3 weeks. He says he was hired by someone who suspected you of infidelity." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Infidelity? That's ridiculous. Who hired you?" Pierce glanced at Blake, who nodded permission to continue. "Your wife, Mr. Porter. Victoria Porter hired me to investigate your activities and gather evidence for potential divorce proceedings." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "That's impossible. Victoria knows about the tracker. She's been worried sick about this whole situation." "Sir," Pierce said quietly, "I have a signed contract and payment records. Mrs. Porter contacted me 6 weeks ago. She said she suspected you were having an affair and wanted documentation before filing for divorce." Blake was studying my face, watching my reaction. "Ethan, did you know anything about this?" "Nothing," I managed. "This is the first I'm hearing about any of this. Victoria and we've had our ups and downs, but nothing that would lead to divorce, and I'm definitely not having an affair." Pierce reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder. "I have everything here. Photos, timeline of your activities, financial research. Mrs. Porter was very specific about what kind of evidence she needed." I opened the folder with trembling hands. Page after page of surveillance photos. Me at the gym, at coffee shops, at work, picking up Olivia from school, detailed logs of my daily routine, maps of my regular routes, even copies of my credit card statements. "She wanted to know if you were hiding assets," Pierce continued, "particularly whether you had any offshore accounts or undisclosed income." Blake was reading over my shoulder. "This is very thorough. Professional-grade surveillance. Mr. Pierce, how much did Mrs. Porter pay you for this investigation? $8,000, $4,000 upfront, $4,000 upon completion of the report. I stared at the photos of myself going about my normal daily routine. Every image was date-stamped and annotated with details about my activities. The level of documentation was staggering. Mr. Pierce, I said slowly, in your professional opinion, did you find any evidence that I was having an affair? None whatsoever. Your routine is remarkably consistent. Gym, work, home, family activities, no unexplained absences, no suspicious meetings, no evidence of extramarital relationships. Then why would Victoria hire you? Pierce shrugged. People hire private investigators for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes they genuinely suspect infidelity. Sometimes they're planning a divorce and want documentation of assets and routines. Sometimes they're just paranoid. Blake closed the folder. Mr. Pierce, we're going to need copies of everything. The contract, payment records, all surveillance materials. This investigation may have uncovered evidence of a crime. What crime? Pierce asked. Fraud, conspiracy, possibly theft. If Mrs. Porter hired you under false pretenses as part of a larger scheme, you might be an unwitting accomplice. I felt numb as Blake arranged for Pierce to deliver all his materials to the Round Rock police station. The drive home was a blur of shock and disbelief. Victoria had been playing a role for weeks, expressing concern about the very surveillance she had arranged herself. But why? What was her endgame? I pulled into our driveway around 2 p.m. and sat in the car for several minutes, trying to process what I'd learned. Through the living room window, I could see Victoria's car in the garage. She was home early from work, which was unusual for a Monday. The confrontation I'd been dreading with a mysterious stalker had suddenly become a confrontation with my wife of 16 years. I found Victoria in the kitchen, standing at the island with her laptop open and papers spread across the counter. She looked up as I entered, and for just a moment, I saw something in her expression that I'd never noticed before. Calculation. Assessment. How did it go with the police? She asked. Did they catch whoever was following you? They caught someone, I said carefully. A private investigator named Raymond Pierce, from Houston. Victoria's face didn't change, but I watched her hands tighten almost imperceptibly on the edge of the counter. A private investigator? What did he want? He says you hired him. The silence stretched between us like a loaded weapon. Victoria's expression shifted through several emotions. Surprise, confusion, then something that looked almost like relief. That's ridiculous, she said finally. Why would I hire someone to follow you? I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the surveillance photos Blake had forwarded to me. A shot of me leaving the gym on a Tuesday morning. Pierce has been documenting my activities for 3 weeks. He has a signed contract with your name on it. Victoria stared at the photo, and I watched her face as she made some kind of internal decision. When she looked up, the mask had dropped completely. Okay, she said quietly. Yes, I hired him. Why? Because I'm leaving you, Ethan. I've been planning it for months. The words hung in the air between us. I felt like I was watching someone else's life fall apart, like this conversation was happening to a different person. Leaving me for what reason? Victoria closed her laptop and gathered her papers into a neat stack. Because I want something different. Because I'm 43 years old and I've spent 16 years of my life in this suburban routine, and I'm tired of it. So you had me investigated like a criminal? I had you investigated because I needed to understand your financial situation, your routines, your vulnerabilities. Divorce is war, Ethan. I needed intelligence. The clinical way she said it was almost more shocking than the admission itself. Divorce is war? We're not enemies, Victoria. We're married. We have a daughter together. We have assets together, she corrected, and a custody arrangement to work out. The marriage ended months ago. You just didn't know it yet. I sat down heavily at the kitchen table. When? When did you decide this? Gradually, over the past year. But I started serious planning in August, after I got the promotion to Regional VP. The new position gives me financial independence and travel flexibility. It seemed like the right time to make a change. By serious planning, you mean hiring a private investigator to spy on me? Among other things. Victoria remained standing, maintaining the tactical advantage of height. I needed to understand our financial exposure, your daily routines, your social connections. Pierce's report was just one piece of the puzzle. I tried to wrap my mind around the level of deception involved. You've been pretending to be worried about the surveillance for weeks. You suggested we call the police. You wanted to hire private security. I needed to see how you'd react to discovering the tracker. It was a useful test of your investigative capabilities and your connections in law enforcement. A test? The word came out louder than I'd intended. You've been testing me? I've been gathering information. Pierce warned me that you have a cybersecurity background, so I needed to understand what you might be capable of if you discovered my plans. I stared at this woman I'd been married to for 16 years, trying to reconcile the person in front of me with the Victoria I thought I knew. What else? What other deception has there been? Victoria walked to the kitchen window and looked out at our backyard, where Olivia's old swing set still stood under the oak tree. The business trips haven't all been for work. I've been meeting with divorce attorneys, financial advisors, real estate agents, building my exit strategy. For how long? 8 months, maybe 9. The timeline was staggering. While I'd been going through my normal routines, work, family dinners, weekend activities with Olivia, Victoria had been systematically planning the destruction of our marriage. What about counseling? I asked. What about trying to work things out? Victoria turned back from the window. I don't want to work things out, Ethan. I want out. I want a different life. And Olivia? We'll adapt. Children are resilient. She'll spend time with both of us, and in the long run, she'll be better off seeing us both happy separately than miserable together. We're not miserable together. You're not miserable. I am. The conversation was happening too fast. 6 hours ago, I'd thought my biggest problem was a mysterious stalker. Now my marriage was ending, and apparently had been ending for months without my knowledge. So what happens now? I asked. Victoria sat down across from me at the kitchen table. I file for divorce. We divide our assets. We work out a custody arrangement for Olivia. We both move on with our lives. Just like that? It doesn't have to be complicated, Ethan. We're both reasonable people. We can handle this like adults. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Reasonable people don't hire private investigators to spy on their spouses. Reasonable people protect their interests, Victoria countered. Pierce's investigation showed me that you're not hiding assets or having affairs. That's useful information for negotiating a fair settlement. What if I don't want a divorce? Victoria's expression hardened. Then we'll have a custody battle instead of a custody agreement, and a property division battle instead of a negotiated settlement. Pierce's report will be very useful in demonstrating that you're an absent father who spends most of his time at work or the gym. I felt the ground shifting under me. Absent father? I pick Olivia up from school every day. I coach her robotics team. I'm at every school event. According to Pierce's surveillance, you spend an average of 47 minutes per day in direct interaction with Olivia. The rest of your time is divided between work and personal activities. The precision of the information was chilling. Victoria had quantified our family life, reduced our relationships to surveillance data and legal strategy. This is insane, I said. You can't just unilaterally decide to blow up our family. I'm not blowing anything up. I'm making a change. People get divorced, Ethan. It happens millions of times every year. People get divorced when their marriages aren't working. Our marriage was working fine until you decided to destroy it. Victoria stood up from the table. Our marriage was working fine for you. For me, it stopped working a long time ago. Then why didn't you say something? Why didn't you talk to me about how you were feeling? Because talking wouldn't have changed anything. You like our life exactly the way it is. You like the routine, the predictability, the suburban success story. I don't. I watched her gather her papers and laptop, preparing to leave the kitchen. Where are you going? To my sister's house in Dallas. I'll be back tomorrow to start moving my things out. What about Olivia? She gets home from school in 2 hours. You'll explain the situation to her. I'll talk to her tomorrow when I come back. Victoria paused at the kitchen doorway. Ethan, this doesn't have to be bitter. We had 16 good years together. We raised a wonderful daughter. We can end this marriage with dignity and respect. Dignity and respect? I stood up from the table. You hired a private investigator to spy on me. You've been lying to me for months. There's nothing dignified about this. I've been protecting my interests, Victoria said calmly. The same way I'd handle any other major life transition. I researched the situation, gathered information, and made informed decisions. I'm not a business acquisition, Victoria. I'm your husband. You were my husband. As of tomorrow, you'll be my ex-husband. She left me sitting in the kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of everything I'd thought I understood about my life. An hour later, I was still sitting at the same table when Olivia's school bus pulled up outside. I watched through the window as my daughter walked up the driveway, backpack slung over her shoulder, looking like the normal teenager she'd been that morning when her world was still intact. I had no idea how to explain that her mother had been lying to us both. Olivia came through the front door calling out her usual greeting. Dad? Mom? I'm home. Kitchen, I called back. She appeared in the doorway, already pulling homework out of her backpack. Where's Mom? Her car's not in the garage. She went to your Aunt Sarah's house in Dallas. She'll be back tomorrow. Olivia looked up from her math textbook. Is everything okay? You look weird. I took a deep breath. We need to talk about something important. Come sit down. The conversation with Olivia was the hardest thing I'd ever had to do. I tried to explain the situation without demonizing Victoria. Tried to help my daughter understand that sometimes marriages end even when they seem to be working fine. So Mom was lying about being worried, Olivia asked when I finished explaining about the private investigator. She was protecting information that she thought was important for making decisions about our family's future. But she was lying. Yes. Olivia was quiet for a long time, processing. Finally, she asked, Are you guys getting divorced because of something I did? No, absolutely not. This has nothing to do with you. Mom and I have some differences about what we want our lives to look like, and we haven't been able to work those differences out. But you didn't even know there were differences until today. Smart kid. Too smart. You're right. I thought we were happy together. I was wrong about that. So what happens to me? You'll live with both of us. Some of the time here, some of the time wherever Mom decides to live. The exact details will get worked out over the next few weeks. Olivia nodded slowly. Dad, are you going to be okay? The question nearly broke me. My 14-year-old daughter was worried about whether I could handle my own life falling apart. I'm going to be fine, I said. This is hard and confusing right now, but we'll figure it out. The important thing is that both Mom and I love you very much, and that's not going to change. That evening, after Olivia had gone upstairs to work on homework, I called Blake to update him on the confrontation with Victoria. She admitted to hiring Pierce? Blake asked. Completely. Said she's been planning the divorce for 8 or 9 months. That's premeditation on a pretty impressive scale. Did she say anything about why she approached it this way? She called divorce war and said she needed intelligence about my routines and financial situation. Blake was quiet for a moment. Ethan, I think you need to talk to a lawyer. Tonight. This level of planning suggests your wife has been building a case against you for months. A case for what? Custody, asset division, maybe alimony. If she's been documenting your activities and financial situation this thoroughly, she's probably been building a narrative about why she deserves a favorable settlement. The idea hadn't occurred to me. You think Pierce's surveillance was just the beginning? I think Pierce's surveillance was designed to find weaknesses she could exploit in divorce proceedings. The fact that he didn't find evidence of affairs or hidden assets doesn't mean she won't try to use the information some other way. Blake gave me the name of a divorce attorney he'd worked with on previous cases. Patricia Pennington. She's sharp, experienced, and she understands how surveillance evidence works in family court. I made the call that evening, and Patricia agreed to meet with me first thing Tuesday morning. "Bring everything you have," she said. "Documents, photos, recordings of conversations. If your wife has been planning this for months, we need to understand exactly what kind of case she's building." Tuesday morning, I sat in Patricia Pennington's downtown Austin office, spreading Pierce's surveillance materials across her conference table. Patricia was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, but Blake had been right about her sharpness. She absorbed information quickly and asked precise questions. "This is very thorough documentation," she said, flipping through Pierce's photos. "Your wife spent serious money on this investigation. $8,000, according to Pierce. For 3 weeks of surveillance, that's actually reasonable, which suggests this wasn't an impulsive decision." Patricia made notes on a yellow pad. "Tell me about your financial situation. Joint accounts, separate accounts, investments, real estate." I walked her through our family finances. Combined income around $320,000 per year, most assets held jointly. College fund for Olivia, retirement accounts, the house we'd bought 4 years ago. Any significant debts? Credit card balances, loans, business obligations? Nothing major. We've been pretty conservative with money. Patricia nodded. "That's good for you. Potentially bad for your wife. In a divorce situation, debt can sometimes be used strategically. If she was hoping to find evidence of hidden assets or secret spending, she came up empty. So what's her strategy now? Unknown. But the fact that she hired a private investigator suggests she's thinking strategically about this divorce. You need to assume she's several steps ahead of you in terms of legal preparation. Patricia recommended that I hire my own private investigator to research Victoria's recent activities. If she's been planning this for months, there might be evidence of other deception, financial accounts you don't know about, professional relationships that cross ethical lines, maybe evidence of her own infidelity. The suggestion made me uncomfortable. I don't want to turn this into a spy versus spy situation. "Ethan, your wife already turned this into a spy situation. She's had you under surveillance for weeks. You can either gather your own intelligence or go into divorce proceedings blind." She was right, but the idea of investigating Victoria felt like a betrayal of everything I'd believed about our marriage. Even now, knowing she'd been lying to me for months, part of me wanted to handle this situation with dignity and trust. "Let me think about it," I said. That afternoon, Victoria returned from Dallas to collect her belongings. I watched from the living room window as she pulled into the driveway in a rental truck, followed by her sister Sarah in a separate car. They'd come prepared for a major move. I met Victoria at the front door. "You're really doing this?" "I told you I was." She brushed past me into the house. "I'll be out of here by tonight." Over the next 4 hours, I watched Victoria systematically dismantle our shared life. Clothes, books, kitchen appliances, artwork, electronics. She moved through the house with a checklist, claiming items with the efficiency of a corporate liquidation. "The living room furniture was a wedding gift from my parents," she said, directing Sarah to wrap the coffee table in moving blankets. "We picked out that dining room set together," I protested. "I paid for it with my credit card. I have the receipts." Everything became a negotiation. Every shared possession had to be evaluated, claimed, or divided. Victoria approached each decision with the same analytical precision she brought to her pharmaceutical sales work. Olivia came home from school in the middle of the move and stood in the doorway, watching strangers carry our furniture out to the truck. "How much are you taking?" she asked Victoria. "Just what belongs to me." "But it's all ours. It's our family's stuff." Victoria knelt down to Olivia's eye level. "Sweetheart, when people get divorced, they have to divide their possessions. Dad will keep his things and I'll take mine. You'll have everything you need in both places." "What about the photo albums?" It was a detail I hadn't thought about, but Olivia was right. 16 years of family photos, documenting everything from our honeymoon to Olivia's first steps to last Christmas morning. "We'll make copies," Victoria said. "That way we'll both have the memories." But it wouldn't be the same, and we all knew it. Those albums represented a shared history that was being divided and parceled out like any other asset. By 8 p.m., Victoria had loaded half of our household belongings into the rental truck. The house felt hollow, with gaps where furniture used to be and empty spaces on the walls where artwork had hung. "I'll be staying at a corporate apartment complex near my office," Victoria told me as she prepared to leave. "Olivia can visit this weekend if she wants to see my new place." "What about school? What about her friends and activities?" "Nothing has to change for Olivia. I'm only moving 20 minutes away." But everything had already changed for Olivia. Her parents' marriage was over, her home was half empty, and her mother had become a stranger who moved through their house like a businesswoman conducting an acquisition. After Victoria left, Olivia and I ordered pizza and sat in the living room, which now contained only a couch and the television. "It's weird how quiet it is," Olivia said. She was right. With half of our belongings gone, the house felt different. Smaller in some ways, larger in others. The silence was profound. "Dad, why didn't Mom talk to you about being unhappy?" I'd been wrestling with the same question. I think sometimes people convince themselves that problems can't be solved, so there's no point in talking about them. But that's not fair to the other person. No, it's not. Olivia was quiet for a while, picking pepperoni off her pizza slice. "Are you going to try to get back together?" "I don't think that's possible now. Too much has happened." Because she lied? Because she made decisions about our family without including me in the process. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership, and she turned it into something else. Something like what? I thought about how Victoria had described divorce as war, how she'd talked about gathering intelligence and protecting her interests. Something like a business arrangement that she decided to terminate. That night, after Olivia had gone to bed, I found myself walking through the house, cataloging what was missing. The kitchen felt strange without Victoria's coffee machine and stand mixer. The bedroom looked institutional with only my furniture remaining. Even the bathroom seemed foreign without Victoria's collection of products and cosmetics. I called Blake around 10 p.m. needing to talk to someone who understood the situation. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I feel like I've been living with a stranger for the past year and I didn't know it." That's probably more accurate than you realize. People who are planning major deceptions often become different people in the process. The Victoria who hired Pierce to investigate you isn't the same person you married 16 years ago. So what do I do now? You rebuild. You take care of Olivia. You figure out who you are as a single person again. And the divorce? Blake was quiet for a moment. "Ethan, I've seen a lot of divorce cases through my police work. The ones that get nasty are usually the ones where someone has been planning and scheming while the other person was completely in the dark. Victoria has a significant advantage right now because she's been thinking strategically about this situation for months. Patricia Pennington said the same thing. You need to catch up fast, understand your rights, protect your assets, and document everything. Victoria has shown you that she's willing to be deceptive and manipulative to get what she wants. You can't afford to assume she'll play fair going forward. The next morning, I made the decision to hire my own investigator. Patricia had given me the contact information for a former police detective named Marcus Rivera, who specialized in divorce-related investigations. I want to understand what Victoria has been doing for the past 8 months, I told Rivera during our phone conversation. Financial activities, professional relationships, anything that might be relevant to divorce proceedings. Most people think they know their spouses, Rivera said. But when someone is planning a secret exit from a marriage, they often develop whole separate lives that their partners never see. Rivera's investigation took 2 weeks and cost me $5,000. What he found was more disturbing than I'd expected. Victoria had opened 3 separate bank accounts over the past 6 months, systematically moving money out of our joint accounts and into accounts held solely in her name. The transfers were small enough to avoid triggering automatic notifications, but they added up to nearly $40,000. She'd also been meeting regularly with a divorce attorney named Patricia Valdez, not for the past month as she'd led me to believe, but for the past 7 months. The consultation records Rivera obtained showed that Victoria had been building a comprehensive legal strategy for our divorce since the spring. But the most shocking discovery was evidence that Victoria had been having an affair. Rivera presented his findings in the same conference room where I'd first met Patricia Pennington. Photographs, financial records, hotel receipts, phone records. The documentation was overwhelming. The affair started in June, Rivera explained, spreading photographs across the table. Dr. Michael Torres, cardiologist at Austin Heart Center. They've been meeting regularly at the Omni Hotel downtown. The photos showed Victoria and a man I didn't recognize entering and leaving the hotel on multiple occasions. The timestamps covered a period of 5 months, the entire time she'd been planning our divorce. How did you find this? I asked. Credit card records. Your wife was careful about hiding the financial transfers, but she used her personal credit card to pay for hotel rooms. The pattern was consistent enough to establish a relationship. Patricia Pennington studied the hotel receipts. This changes everything. If Victoria was having an affair while planning the divorce, it could impact asset division and potentially custody arrangements. I stared at the photographs of my wife with another man. After everything that had happened, the surveillance, the lies, the systematic dismantling of our marriage, this felt like the final betrayal. There's more, Rivera continued. Doctor, Torres is married with 3 children. This affair represents a significant ethical violation for someone in his position. Meaning what? Meaning your wife chose to have an affair with someone who had as much to lose as she did if the relationship became public. That suggests a level of calculation and risk assessment that goes beyond simple infidelity. Patricia was making notes on her legal pad. Ethan, this gives us substantial leverage in divorce proceedings. Victoria can't claim moral superiority or present herself as the injured party if evidence of her affair becomes public. But I wasn't thinking about leverage or legal strategy. I was thinking about the woman I'd been married to for 16 years, trying to understand how she'd become someone capable of this level of deception. What do we do with this information? I asked. We confront her, Patricia said, privately before she files for divorce. Give her a chance to negotiate a fair settlement before this becomes a matter of public record. The confrontation took place in Patricia's office on a Thursday afternoon. Victoria arrived thinking she was meeting with my attorney to discuss preliminary divorce terms. Instead, she found herself looking at photographs of her affair with Dr. Torres. I watched her face as Patricia spread the evidence across the conference table. For the first time since this whole situation began, Victoria looked genuinely surprised. Where did you get these? She asked quietly. The same way you got surveillance information about Ethan, Patricia replied. We hired a private investigator. Victoria picked up one of the hotel receipts, studying the details. This is 5 months of my private life. 5 months of adultery, Patricia corrected. While you were planning to divorce your husband and claim half of his assets. My relationship with Michael has nothing to do with the divorce. Actually, it has everything to do with the divorce, Patricia said. Texas is a community property state, but adultery can impact asset division if it can be shown that marital assets were used to support the affair. I hadn't spoken since Victoria arrived, but now I found my voice. $40,000, Victoria. You moved $40,000 out of our joint accounts while you were sleeping with another man. Victoria's composure finally cracked. That money was for my legal fees and moving expenses. It wasn't used to support any relationship. Hotel rooms at the Omni aren't free, Patricia said, tapping the receipts. Neither are the dinners at expensive restaurants or the weekend trips to San Antonio. I paid for those things with my own credit card, which you paid off with money transferred from joint accounts that included your husband's income. The legal technicalities were clear, even to me. Victoria had used marital assets to fund her affair, which gave us significant leverage in divorce proceedings. What do you want? Victoria asked, looking directly at me for the first time since entering the office. I want an honest conversation, I said, about what really happened to our marriage and why you chose to handle it this way. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, studying the photographs on the table. I met Michael at a pharmaceutical conference in Dallas. We started talking about clinical trials, then about our personal lives. He understood the pressures of my career in a way that you never did. So you started an affair. I started a relationship with someone who made me feel valued and appreciated. Someone who saw my professional success as an asset rather than a threat. The comment stung because it contained just enough truth to be painful. I had sometimes felt intimidated by Victoria's rapid career advancement, her increasing salary, her expanding professional network. That doesn't justify lying to me for months, I said. And it doesn't justify using marital assets to fund an affair, Patricia added. Victoria looked back and forth between us. Fine. What kind of settlement are you proposing? The negotiation took 3 hours. By the end of it, Victoria had agreed to a divorce settlement that was significantly more favorable to me than anything she'd originally planned. 60-40 assets split in my favor, primary custody of Olivia, and no alimony payments. There's one more thing, Patricia said as Victoria prepared to sign the agreement. We need your commitment that the relationship with Dr. Torres will end immediately. That's not part of the divorce settlement. It is if you want to avoid having the affair become public record. Dr. Torres has 3 children and a medical practice to protect. I doubt he wants his infidelity documented in court proceedings. Victoria signed the papers without saying another word. But the story didn't end there. 2 weeks later, Rivera called with information that changed everything again. I kept digging into Victoria's professional activities, he said. There's something you need to know about her pharmaceutical work. We met at a coffee shop near downtown Austin, and Rivera spread new documents across our table. Financial records, emails, meeting schedules, and what looked like pharmaceutical industry reports. Your wife has been taking kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies, Rivera said. Substantial payments disguised as consulting fees and speaker honoraria. The evidence was damning. Over the past 2 years, Victoria had received more than $200,000 in payments from drug companies, far exceeding what would be normal for someone in her position. This is federal healthcare fraud, Rivera explained. The kind of thing that results in criminal charges, not just professional sanctions. I stared at the financial records, trying to process the implications. She's been committing crimes? Multiple crimes. Healthcare fraud, tax evasion, possibly money laundering depending on how she's been handling the payments. How did you find this? Victoria's financial records showed deposits that didn't match her reported salary. When I investigated the sources, I found a pattern of pharmaceutical company payments that violate federal anti-kickback statutes. Rivera had contacted a federal agent he knew at the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General. The agent was very interested in Rivera's findings. This kind of case can result in significant federal penalties, Rivera explained. Criminal charges, civil monetary penalties, exclusion from federal health care programs. If Victoria is convicted, she could face prison time and permanent ban from working in the pharmaceutical industry. The magnitude of Victoria's deception was staggering. While I'd been going about my normal life, work, family, routine responsibilities, my wife had been committing federal crimes, planning divorce, and conducting an extramarital affair. "What do I do with this information?" I asked. "That's up to you. But you should know that federal healthcare fraud investigations tend to expand rapidly. If Victoria is taking kickbacks, there are probably other people involved. The government will want her cooperation in identifying other participants." I drove home that afternoon feeling like I was living in someone else's life. The woman I'd been married to for 16 years wasn't just unfaithful and deceptive. She was a federal criminal. That evening, I called Patricia Pennington to update her on Rivera's discoveries. "This changes the divorce situation completely," Patricia said. "If Victoria is facing federal criminal charges, she won't be in a position to fight for custody or assets." "What about Olivia? What happens to her if Victoria goes to prison?" "You'd have full custody. Victoria would be lucky to get supervised visitation while she's serving her sentence." The conversation with Olivia that night was even harder than explaining the divorce had been. "Mom might go to jail?" Olivia asked when I finished explaining the situation. "It's possible. She made some very serious mistakes at work, and now the government is investigating." "What kind of mistakes?" I tried to explain healthcare fraud in terms a 14-year-old could understand. She accepted money from drug companies in exchange for recommending their products to doctors. That's illegal because it can influence medical decisions in ways that aren't good for patients. Olivia was quiet for a long time. "So Mom was lying about work stuff too?" "Yes." "How long has she been lying about everything?" "I don't know. Maybe years." Olivia started crying then, and I held her while she processed the complete collapse of everything she'd believed about her mother. The federal investigation moved quickly. Within 6 weeks, Victoria was arrested at her office and charged with multiple counts of healthcare fraud. The local news covered the story, including details about her pharmaceutical industry payments and the federal government's broader investigation into kickback schemes. I watched the news coverage from our living room, which still felt empty without the furniture Victoria had taken. The reporter described Victoria as a regional pharmaceutical executive who allegedly received more than $200,000 in illegal payments from drug companies over a 2-year period. The woman on the television looked like my wife, but she was a stranger to me now. Everything I'd believed about Victoria, her professional integrity, her commitment to our family, her basic honesty, had been an illusion. The divorce proceedings became a formality after Victoria's arrest. She was in no position to fight for custody or assets while facing federal criminal charges. The settlement we'd negotiated before her arrest became even more favorable to me and Olivia. Victoria pled guilty to federal healthcare fraud charges 6 months later and was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. The judge also ordered her to pay $300,000 in restitution to the government and banned her permanently from working in any capacity related to federal healthcare programs. I attended the sentencing hearing, not out of vindictiveness, but because I needed to see the conclusion of this chapter of my life. Victoria looked smaller in her prison uniform, defeated in a way I'd never seen before. As she was led away in handcuffs, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The woman I'd been married to for 16 years was gone. Had probably been gone for years without my realizing it. But now, at least, I knew the truth. The months following Victoria's imprisonment were about rebuilding. Olivia and I developed new routines, new traditions, new ways of being a family of 2. I took a promotion at work that came with a significant salary increase, partly because my experience with surveillance and cybersecurity had made me valuable as an expert witness in corporate fraud cases. Olivia excelled in school and her robotics competitions, perhaps channeling her energy into achievement as a way of coping with her mother's absence. She visited Victoria in prison occasionally, but the conversations were strained and formal. "She keeps apologizing," Olivia told me after one visit. "But I don't think she really understands what she did wrong." Victoria had destroyed our family for reasons that still weren't entirely clear to me. Professional ambition, personal dissatisfaction, the thrill of deception, whatever had motivated her, had been more important than the relationships she'd built over 16 years. 2 years after Victoria's conviction, I met Jordan Hayes at a cybersecurity conference where I was speaking about detecting surveillance in corporate environments. Jordan was an attorney who specialized in cybersecurity law, and we found ourselves talking long after the conference ended. "Your story is fascinating," Jordan said over dinner. "Most people never realize they're under surveillance until it's too late." "I got lucky," I said. "If I hadn't found that GPS tracker, Victoria's plan probably would have worked perfectly." "But you did find it, and you had the technical background to investigate it properly." Jordan was right. My cybersecurity expertise had been the key to unraveling Victoria's deception. Without those skills, I might have spent years in litigation, fighting over assets and custody while never understanding the full scope of what had been done to me. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared professional interests rather than the passionate romance of my youth. Jordan understood the technology aspects of what I'd been through and had seen enough cybersecurity cases to appreciate the complexity of modern surveillance and fraud. "Trust but verify," Jordan said one evening as we discussed a case she was working on. I shook my head. "That phrase has become too popular. Everyone says it now, like it's some kind of universal wisdom." "What would you say instead?" "Verification is survival. In our digital age, the people who don't verify what they're told become victims." Jordan smiled. "That sounds like the title of a book." She was right. A year later, I published The Watched Life, a cybersecurity expert's guide to detecting surveillance and protecting digital privacy. The book became a bestseller in both the cybersecurity and self-help categories and led to speaking engagements around the country. Olivia, now 18 and heading to UT Austin to study computer science, had read the manuscript before publication. "Dad, do you think Mom ever really loved us?" she asked one evening as we discussed the book. I'd wrestled with that question for years. "I think she loved us as much as she was capable of loving anyone. But somewhere along the way, she became someone who valued personal success more than personal relationships." "Do you miss her?" "I miss the person I thought she was. The real Victoria, the one who could lie to us for years while committing federal crimes. I never really knew that person." Victoria was released from federal prison after serving 14 months of her sentence. She moved to Oregon, where she found work in medical device sales, one of the few healthcare-related fields where her criminal record didn't automatically disqualify her. We've had minimal contact since her release. She sends birthday cards to Olivia and occasionally emails about logistics related to our daughter's college expenses. The woman who once shared my bed and my dreams had become a stranger who handled necessary communications with professional courtesy. 5 years after finding that GPS tracker on my car, I'm a different person living a different life. I'm the chief technology officer at a major cybersecurity firm, married to Jordan, and stepfather to her 12-year-old son Mason. Olivia is thriving in college, studying the same cybersecurity principles that saved our family from complete destruction. I often think about the morning I found that tracker. Such a small device, but it changed everything. If I hadn't noticed that slight vibration in the car, if I hadn't been curious enough to investigate, if I hadn't had the technical background to understand what I was looking at, Victoria's plan might have worked perfectly. But I did notice. I did investigate. And in the end, The surveillance she'd arranged became the key to exposing all of her deceptions. Last month, I was the keynote speaker at a cybersecurity conference in San Francisco. The topic was personal digital privacy in an age of ubiquitous surveillance. During the Q&A session, someone asked how ordinary people could protect themselves from the kind of surveillance I'd experienced. Learn to notice anomalies, I said. Pay attention to your environment. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. And remember that in our digital age, the watchers can always become the watched. After the presentation, a woman approached me with a story about finding suspicious charges on her credit card. A man asked about detecting GPS trackers on vehicles. A teenager wanted to know how to tell if someone was monitoring her social media activity. Each conversation reminded me that surveillance and deception are not rare occurrences. They're normal parts of modern life, and the people who survive them intact are the ones who learn to detect them early. That evening, I called Olivia from my hotel room. "How was the conference?" she asked. "Good. Lots of people with stories similar to ours." "Similar how?" "People who discovered they were being watched or investigated by someone they trusted." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "Dad, do you think what happened to us made us stronger?" I considered the question. We'd lost a wife and mother, but we'd gained knowledge about deception and surveillance that most people never acquire. We'd learned to verify what we were told, to investigate anomalies, to protect our digital privacy. "I think it made us more aware," I said finally. "Whether that's the same as stronger, I'm not sure." "I'm glad you found that tracker." "So am I." After we hung up, I stood at the hotel window looking out at San Francisco's lights. Somewhere in the city below, people were conducting surveillance on other people. GPS trackers were being attached to vehicles. Financial records were being reviewed. Private investigators were documenting activities and building cases. The watchers were watching, as they always had been, but now I knew how to watch back. In our digital age, that knowledge isn't just useful, it's survival. Trust, as I've learned, is a luxury that can be easily exploited. But verification is a skill that can save your life, your family, and your future. The woman I'd been married to for 16 years had taught me that lesson in the most painful way possible. But she had taught it thoroughly, and I would never forget it. The GPS tracker that started everything sits on my desk at home now, a small black reminder of how quickly a normal life can become something else entirely. Sometimes Mason asks what it is, and I tell him it's a piece of technology that helped me learn an important lesson. "What lesson?" he asks. "That the most dangerous surveillance comes from the people you trust most." It's a hard lesson for a 12-year-old to understand, but it's one he'll need to know eventually. In a world where everyone carries tracking devices in their pockets and leaves digital footprints everywhere they go, the ability to detect deception isn't just a professional skill, it's a life skill. Victoria taught me that, though I doubt it was her intention. She wanted to destroy my life systematically and secretly. Instead, she gave me the knowledge and experience that became the foundation of my new career and my new understanding of how the world really works. The watchers are always watching. But now I know how to watch them back. And in our digital age, that might be the most valuable skill of all. Jordan often asks if I regret marrying Victoria, given everything that happened. It's a complex question with no simple answer. If I hadn't married Victoria, I wouldn't have Olivia. I wouldn't have learned the lessons that shaped my current career. I wouldn't have developed the expertise that has helped countless other people protect themselves from surveillance and deception. I regret that she became someone capable of such deception, I tell Jordan, but I don't regret the experiences that made me who I am today. The person I am today is someone who notices anomalies, who investigates suspicious activities, who verifies what he's told. I'm someone who understands that surveillance is a normal part of modern life, and that the best defense against unwanted watching is learning how to watch back. That's the central message of my book, my speaking engagements, and my work in cybersecurity. Trust is precious, but verification is survival. In our digital age, the watchers can become the watched, if you know what to look for and how to look for it. The morning I found that GPS tracker, I thought my biggest problem was a mysterious stalker. I had no idea that I was about to uncover a web of deception that included marital surveillance, extramarital affairs, and federal healthcare fraud. But I did uncover it, because I had the skills and knowledge to investigate anomalies. And in the end, those same skills protected my daughter and me from the worst consequences of Victoria's deceptions. The watchers are always watching. The question is whether you're watching them back. As I finish writing this story, 5 years and many lessons later, I know the answer to that question. I'm watching. I'm always watching. And I'll never stop. Because in our digital age, vigilance isn't paranoia, it's survival. The end. I never thought my life could shatter in the span of a single morning. My name is Nathan Cole, and this is the story of how I discovered that the two people I trusted most in the world had been systematically destroying everything I'd built for 18 months. It was a Thursday in September, one of those crisp Phoenix mornings that made me grateful to live in Arizona. The construction business had been good to me. Better than good, actually. At 43, I co-owned Cole & Walsh Construction with my best friend David Walsh, and we'd built something worth $8.5 million from absolutely nothing. Victoria, my wife of 16 years, had her own successful interior design consulting business, and our kids Brooke and Tyler were thriving at Phoenix Country Day School. I pulled into the parking lot of our Scottsdale office building, still wearing the satisfaction of a successful 2-day trip to Tucson. We'd just landed a major municipal contract that would keep our crews busy through the next year. David had handled everything perfectly while I was gone, just like he always did. "Morning, Mr. Cole," Maria Santos called out as I walked through the glass doors. Our receptionist was already at her desk despite the early hour, sorting through the morning mail. "How was Tucson?" "Productive, very productive," I said, adjusting my tie. "Is David in yet?" "He's in the conference room with the Brennan Group people. He asked me to give you this when you arrived." She held out an unmarked manila envelope. "It was on my desk when I got here this morning." I took the envelope, noting its weight. Something was inside besides paper. "No return address?" "Nothing. I figured it might be from one of the contractors." I nodded and headed toward my office, tossing the envelope onto my desk as I grabbed my coffee mug. Through my window, I could see David gesturing animatedly at our conference table, surrounded by suits I recognized as potential clients. He caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up. I returned the gesture and settled into my chair. The envelope sat there, innocent and unremarkable. I almost ignored it. We got dozens of pieces of mail every day from subcontractors, suppliers, and prospective clients. But something about the way Maria had handed it to me, the deliberate placement on her desk, made me curious. I tore it open and pulled out a single sheet of paper. What I read made my blood turn to ice water. "Your wife is having an affair with your business partner. They're planning to destroy you financially. I have proof. Meet me." My hands started shaking. The paper felt like it was burning my fingers. Below the typed message was a high-resolution photograph that made my stomach lurch. Victoria and David sitting close together at Mastro's, the upscale steakhouse where we often entertained clients. But this wasn't business. Victoria's hand was on David's thigh, her face turned toward his with an expression I knew intimately. The kiss they were sharing was passionate, hungry, nothing like the friendly pecks they exchanged at family gatherings. The letter continued. "They're transferring assets now. Check your accounts. They think you're stupid. You have 48 hours. At the bottom were meeting instructions. Camelback Mountain Hiking Trail, Saturday 7 a.m. Come alone, I'll find you." I stared at the photograph until my eyes watered. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 weeks ago, on a Tuesday evening when I'd been in Flagstaff meeting with city planners. Victoria had said she was having dinner with her friend Jennifer. David had supposedly been working late on bid proposals. My office door felt like it was closing in around me. The familiar sounds of the construction office, phones ringing, the copy machine humming, David's voice carrying from the conference room, suddenly seemed foreign and threatening. I grabbed my laptop and opened our business banking portal. My fingers fumbled with the password twice before I got it right. When the account summary loaded, I had to read it 3 times before the numbers sank in. $340,000 had been transferred yesterday to an account I didn't recognize. The transaction was authorized with my electronic signature, but I hadn't made any transfers. I'd been in Tucson, sleeping in a Hampton Inn, and dreaming about the contracts we'd just secured. My personal investment account showed similar irregularities. Mutual funds worth $125,000 had been liquidated over the past month. The proceeds moved to accounts I'd never seen before. Each transaction bore my forged signature. I opened a new browser tab and logged into the county recorder's office website. Property deeds for 2 of our most valuable development projects had been transferred to something called Desert Sun Holdings LLC. I'd never heard of Desert Sun Holdings. According to the filing, I was listed as the president, but I'd never signed any incorporation papers. The conference room erupted in laughter. David was probably charming our potential clients with one of his stories about construction disasters. He had a gift for making people feel comfortable, for building trust. I'd always admired that about him. Now it made me sick. I picked up my phone to call my attorney, then set it down. Who could I trust? David had access to everything. Our bank accounts, our legal documents, our business relationships. If he was capable of this level of deception, how deep did it go? Instead, I called Victoria. "Hey, honey," she answered on the second ring. "How was your trip? Did you get the Tucson contract?" Her voice sounded normal, cheerful, completely innocent. For a moment, I wondered if the letter was some kind of cruel joke. But the numbers on my screen were real. The photograph was real. "The trip was fine," I said carefully. "What are you doing today?" "Just the usual. I have a client meeting at 10, then I'm picking up Tyler from swimming practice. Brooke's staying late for debate team." "Why?" "No reason. I'll see you tonight." "Love you," she said, and hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand. "Love you." She'd said it so easily, so naturally. How long had she been lying to me? How long had she been playing this part while stealing my life savings? A knock on my door made me jump. "Come in." David walked in, still riding high from his meeting. "The Brennan Group is very interested. They want to start with a strip mall in Tempe, but if that goes well, they're talking about a whole mixed-use development. We could be looking at $20 million in contracts over the next 3 years." He settled into the chair across from my desk, exactly where he'd sat 1,000 times before to discuss business, to plan our future, to share ideas that had built our company. His face showed nothing but enthusiasm and friendship. "That's great," I managed. "You don't look great. Everything okay? You're not getting sick, are you?" I studied his face, looking for some sign of guilt or deception. But David had always been good at controlling his expressions. It was one of the things that made him such an effective negotiator. "I'm fine, just tired from the drive." "Well, you should go home early today. Victoria's been missing you while you've been traveling so much." He paused, and I thought I caught something flickering across his features. "You're lucky to have her, you know. Not every wife would be so understanding about the business demands." My hands clenched into fists under my desk. "Yeah, I'm very lucky. I'll handle the rest of the Brennan follow-up. You've done the hard work already." He stood to leave, then turned back. "Actually, can you sign off on that equipment transfer we discussed? I put the paperwork on your desk yesterday." I looked down and saw a stack of documents that hadn't been there when I left for Tucson. Equipment transfer agreements, authorizing the movement of our heavy machinery to a storage facility I didn't recognize. "I'll look at it later," I said. "No rush. Just whenever you get a chance." After he left, I examined the transfer documents more carefully. The storage facility was owned by Desert Sun Holdings LLC, the same company that now apparently owned our development properties. The papers requested my signature to authorize moving over $2 million worth of excavators, bulldozers, and construction equipment. I wasn't going to sign anything. Instead, I spent the next 2 hours doing the most thorough audit of our business finances that I'd ever conducted. What I found made the morning's discoveries look like minor accounting errors. Phantom employees had been added to our payroll, people who didn't exist but whose paychecks were being deposited into accounts I couldn't trace. Invoices for materials and services that had never been delivered. Purchase orders for equipment that had somehow disappeared from our inventory. The pattern went back 18 months, almost to the day. Small amounts at first, easily explained as clerical errors or normal business fluctuations. But the theft had accelerated dramatically in recent weeks, probably timed to my increased travel schedule. By lunchtime, I documented over $1.5 million in fraudulent transactions. And that was just what I could identify in a few hours of searching. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Don't forget Tyler has a swim meet tomorrow night, 6 p.m. at Phoenix Country Day." I stared at the message, wondering how she could be thinking about swim meets while systematically robbing our family blind. Then I realized that was probably the point. Maintaining the illusion of normal family life while she and David bled us dry. I needed help, but I couldn't trust anyone in our normal circle of advisors. David had relationships with our attorney, our accountant, our banker. For all I knew, he'd been positioning himself to control our professional relationships for months. I did a Google search for business attorney Phoenix and found someone with no connection to our existing network. Jennifer Martinez had excellent reviews and specialized in partnership disputes and financial fraud. I called her office and managed to get an emergency appointment for later that afternoon. "I need you to understand," I told Martinez as I spread the documentation across her conference table. "I'm not looking for a divorce attorney yet. I need someone who can help me protect what's left of my business before they finish destroying it." Jennifer Martinez was younger than I'd expected, probably early 30s, but her questions were sharp and focused. She understood the financial documents immediately and didn't waste time with expressions of sympathy or disbelief. "The good news is that you've caught this before they finish the job," she said, after reviewing everything. "The bad news is that they've been very sophisticated about creating legal cover for themselves. These transfer documents would probably hold up in court if challenged individually. But taken together? Taken together, they constitute a clear pattern of embezzlement and fraud. The question is whether we can stop them before they move the remaining assets offshore or liquidate them entirely." She explained the legal steps we could take immediately. Emergency injunctions to freeze all business and personal accounts, court orders preventing the transfer of any additional assets, and preliminary investigations to trace the money that had already been stolen. "I should warn you," she said as I signed the retainer agreement, "once we start this process, there's no going back. Your business partnership will be destroyed, your marriage will be over, and everyone involved will likely face criminal charges. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Brooke and Tyler, about the life we'd built, about the friendships and business relationships that would be casualties of this war. Then I thought about the photograph of Victoria and David kissing, about the millions of dollars they'd stolen while I was traveling to build our business. "I'm prepared," I said. The legal paperwork was filed by 4 p.m. By 5, emergency injunctions were in place preventing any further transfers from our business or personal accounts. David wouldn't be able to move another penny without triggering immediate legal consequences. I drove home to Scottsdale, trying to prepare myself for what was coming. Our house sat on 2 acres in the foothills, a testament to the success Victoria and I had built together. The circular driveway wound through professionally landscaped gardens that Victoria had designed herself. Everything looked peaceful, normal, beautiful. Tyler was in the pool, working on his freestyle stroke. At 11, he was already showing real talent, fast enough to compete at the state level if he kept improving. Brooke was at the patio table with her laptop, probably working on homework. At 14, she was taking honors classes and maintaining a 4.0 GPA.